This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by The Fire Store. Learn more about getting the gear you need at prices you can afford by visiting thefirestore.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. I am your host, Aaron Zamzow. I'm a fire officer way up north where it's cold and rain and drizzly, but we still train, we still fight fire. We're still pretty legitimate up there. Trust me on that one. I'm also a writer for Fire Rescue One, and I'm not alone on that platform because I'm very, very, very fortunate to have the editor-in-chief of Fire Rescue One, someone near and dear to me who keeps this whole show organized and going. It's the commander, as I like to call her, Janelle Fosquet. Good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm still riding the high from the Science to the Station event and the USFA Summit, which were fantastic events, and still following up with tons of great contacts and folks I met there. And it's always great to meet new people.
It's good to get you out of the office. Unfortunately, or fortunately for them, every time you do, more and more people have to write articles, and we get more and more people that are I like to call us misfits here that join and listen to the podcast because we all believe in self-improvement and having, really, really good discussions, in-depth discussions about how we can make our organizations better, how we can make ourselves better. And we have a prime example with us today. We got Chief Trevor Frodge here, who behind the scenes, as always, Janelle always gets mad because, we have some great conversations talking about different things, fire attack, talking about personnel. So we're going to dig into a bunch of that stuff. But first and foremost, Chief, thanks for being here, man. You've had quite an eventful couple of months, and we've had to reschedule sometimes, of course, but it's really good to see you. How are you?
I'm great, man. Thank you for having me on, obviously. And, it's a real honor, real humbling to be part of this podcast today. It's been an interesting couple of months, as you said, but I'm excited to be on here and to get into it, man. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to talk about, what you've gone through probably this last month. For those that don't know, Chief is, he's a writer here for Fire Rescue One. He's got some great articles, which we'll dig into some of those topics, but you're also the chief of training for the Westchester Fire Department in suburban Cincinnati, Ohio. You're a paramedic, fire EMS instructor, fire inspector. You're also a member of the Butler County Tech Rescue Team, as well as a hazmat specialist for Ohio Task Force One. And you just got back from a 3-week deployment working down in the Carolinas, helping with the recovery efforts from Hurricane Helene and Milton. And I really wanted to start there. Like, what was that like? I don't think the rest of the country and, and some of us that are on task force, assignments understand really what goes into that. So dig into that. Tell me kind of what happened there and all the different things you were exposed to down there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been on the task force for going on 8 years now as a hazmat specialist. And there are, for people that don't understand, there are 28 federal task forces across the country. The United States itself is broken up into 3 regions. So there's East, Central, and West. Ohio is part of the East Division, and there's 10 teams in the East Division. Just kind of like organizationally, 10,000, 30,000 foot view of the USAR task force system, which is through FEMA. Now, obviously, a lot of the listeners probably understand, we're firefighters that when we get activated as part of the task force, we get deployed. So the activation order came down 3 weeks ago, a little over 3 weeks ago now. And I was at work teaching CPR recertification for my own organization. And next thing you know, I'm grabbing bags and I'm heading off and into the sunset. So we went originally to Florida. And so what FEMA tries to do is they try and pre-position assets for the hurricane. The nice thing about a hurricane is you can kind of see it coming. The downside of a hurricane, you never know what it's going to do. So, the meteorological aspect and just all the information that's coming in is kind of guiding FEMA on what they want to do to pre-position assets. So we went to Orlando originally, got our equipment staged, got our equipment ready, did some tasking and some training, making sure that we're good on all of our equipment. We're ready to go, ready to respond, and stood by. So when Helene made landfall, originally it was going to be a Cat 5, and it was a Cat 5 out into the Gulf. And I've been on other, this is not my first deployment by any stretch. I think it was like my 8th. So I've been in some pretty devastating areas. Lake Charles, Louisiana. I've been, lived on an airport tarmac there. Hurricane Harvey in Houston, when Houston got pretty messed up, was on that one as well. Hurricane Ian with Fort Myers. So I've been around on some of these bigger deployments. And when it made landfall, as soon as the storm had passed and it was safe for us to travel, we were operating. So 2 hours after landfall, I was northwest of Tampa with our team doing search and rescue operations. We had boats in the water, surveying people. We were actually in a neighborhood that actually had a house fire going on to it, but it was flooded, so they were struggling to get to the fire. They got the fire put out, and then we started search and rescue missions. We did a lot of wide area search, so just checking up on people. The water, fortunately, quickly receded with Helene there, but as that storm obviously tracked north, the intense rainfall that happened in the Carolinas prior to Helene even arriving just made that, for lack of a better term, devastating.
Yeah.
And then several days into our Florida operations, we got retasked to the Carolinas. So we packed up, drove up there, started taking operations. They staged us in Cherokee with a bunch of other task forces to work kind of the east side of Asheville. The downside with what happened was obviously all the roads are washed out. So everything going into the Carolinas originally was by helicopter, state assets. It was logistically just a giant challenge. Then we worked the west side of Asheville, Avery County, Watauga County, those areas, checking up on people. And I mean, those areas were even devastated as well. Just we still had some flooding while we were up there. Still doing a lot of wide area search missions, trying to track everybody down. The area we were in a week and a half after the landfall was still no power, no water, but incredibly resilient people. And that, I think that's the thing that you see out of these is you see the goodness of humanity on full display, right? You see people coming out, neighbors helping neighbors. You see just the absolute best that humanity can put forward when you're in these disaster zones. Incredibly heartbreaking. I mean, these people, both in Florida and in the Carolinas, have lost everything. The neighborhood we were in had collapsed houses in both areas. All their property has been flooded out. I mean, everything's gone, right? So you're talking millions and millions of people lost everything. But they're still just incredibly grateful and, just very, very good people. People offering us like, hey, do you need water? Do you need food? Like, no, like, we're here to help you. Like, do you need food and water? Like, what can we do for you? So that was.
Can you share a few of those stories, like some of the people that you met along the way?
I mean, it's just real generic like that, right? I mean, we would just find people as we're out and about, doing our wide area search missions. One thing that we do very, very well is we do damage assessments. So they'll put us out into squads and we'll walk or drive or go up these back mountain roads and just checking on people, right? Because when the task force comes in, like as the federal government, we can't just come into a town like that. There's laws against that. You can't do that. So a task force is almost just like a big engine company. That's the best way to look at it. So we get requested by the state, then tasked to a county or a locality, and then we work for them. So we're just like another engine company told to go do work. So, and we can't leave until our work's done, just like checking in and out of an incident. So the county asked us to go do damage assessments and go check on people because they don't have enough people to do that job. So we'd go up, knock on doors, talk to people, and we have a search platform that we use, an online database that basically the county can see and the Emergency Operations Center can see as our tracking. And so you're seeing all the structures we've searched and all the damage, and that helps you track where the storm went. It helps to see like flood patterns. Like there's a lot of good information and data can be gleaned from that. But as we're out there doing that, we're knocking on doors, talking to people, hey, do you guys need food and water? Like, no, please. Like, do you need food and water? Like, a lot of people ask, when's the power coming back on? Like, I'm not that guy, but, I know there's electricians down the street right now stringing lines. Like, hopefully it's soon, right? We don't have power either. Like, so, we're living in a place that we're on generator power or whatever. Like, our job is to come in and not impact the community. We bring our own shelter and food and water with us. If we can be in a sheltered place, that's even better. Like we ended up staying at Appalachian State for a minute just because it was a hardened building and the students were gone. So we were able to stay there, but we're sleeping on the floor. That building had been flooded out at one point. And then we're just, tasked to do work wherever we can and just trying to make a difference wherever we can.
Yeah, being an extension, I think that helps. I think a lot of us kind of understand it a little bit more. It's not like you're coming in and dividing and conquering. You're hey, all right, here we're assets. We can give you suggestions and these are the resources that we have to help you. But ultimately, it's that jurisdiction telling you how they need you. Correct? Like that's
absolutely. One of our task force leaders, he puts it best. We do. The basics of we're a technical rescue team, right? Our main mission is structural collapse. Like that is our thing. Our jam is structural collapse. And our task force has made, Surfside. It was on, 9/11. So we're no stranger to structural collapse. And we do that very, very well. So we do the basics of structural collapse at a very, very good level, very elite level, in austere conditions, right? That's kind of what we do. So, in this case, like it was, hey, go out and track down people and knock on doors. And we want to make sure every house is searched. And every locality is different. Like when we were working in Pasco County, Florida, they kind of wanted that. And like these people, I met a couple that had moved from New Jersey 18 months prior. Idalia had hit. They had lost a lot. They'd rebuilt. And then Helene comes through and wipes them out. And so that they had lost everything twice. But again, they're still just incredibly resilient. Just, checking on each other, neighbors going in and helping pull stuff out of their house, already cutting drywall, like whatever they can do to salvage everything they have. A lot of the people that said that they didn't have insurance, right? And that's, heartbreaking, right? That's why, I'm so thankful all these organizations that are standing up and donating stuff for hurricane relief, and because a lot of the people in Florida didn't have flood insurance, like for whatever reason. So
and North Carolina too. I mean, they couldn't. I was in North Carolina right when this started, and the rain before the hurricane, and then on top of the hurricane, it was way too much for any infrastructure. But of course, you have the mountains where all that water runs off into these communities, right? And you see some of the videos where literally that water was on top of them within, 30 seconds. It seemed like just coming, right? And so what was the biggest surprise, like the difference between Florida and North Carolina that you just saw in these last couple tragedies here, these last disasters?
Yeah. So one would be like with Florida, the water comes in from the ocean, and because Florida is Florida, right? It recedes, right? Even the high parts of Florida, we know are going to flood, and then that flood water is going to come back through like the intercoastal waterway and then out, right? So we'll typically stay around for a little bit, waiting for those floodwaters to come back up and kind of ebb and flow. That's kind of a known thing in these. Whereas the Carolinas, right, that it hit the mountains, and so you've got water coming down those mountains at velocity. So as that water is picking up speed and it's picking up logs, and then it's picking up trees, and it's picking up houses, it's just a monster, and it's a monster that you can't get away from. It was an absolute tragedy, right? Like the force of water. We talk about it in water trainings, and we talk about it, just in our ongoing trainings. Like water's no joke. one of our water specialists, he's probably one of the best water specialists I know, talks about it's the most dangerous thing we do is swift water stuff, just because like we kind of take it for granted. But the force of water coming down those mountains, it re-etched landscapes. You could see where rivers have moved and where roads have moved and washed out. Like it's never gonna. It carved new things into the earth. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. You know, and you guys see a lot there. And so, my question just to you is just, how are you doing with it? I mean, you see the devastation. It's, you have a great outlook because you also see some of the best of humanity that we don't get to see in pictures of this. We just see the devastation and we see people, their lives gone. We don't get to see the good side of that. Is that what helps you kind of keep doing this and maintaining?
For me, like, I guess part of it is I'm an infinite optimist. We have
we call them misfits on this show.
For me, first off, yeah, I'm good, right? And I'm very fortunate that I'm good. I'm very thankful that I'm good, and I'm religious in the sense of like, just thanking God for the blessings that I have, and then praying for the people that have lost everything. We have a very resilient team leadership that kept our spirits high. And while there was a lot of misinformation and a lot of stuff that was coming out about this, like we knew what our job was and we knew what we were doing, right? So all the stuff you started seeing on social media and things, so we were there, right? And I can't speak for every single thing that happened or didn't happen, but I know what I was doing, and I know what my team was doing, and I know what our guys were doing, and we were doing very good work. And if we could just affect one person, then that's that mission success, right? If we could help find closure to one family, or if we could just provide a service to somebody, then we did the right thing. And I think that's the thing with the fire service in general is that we're mission oriented. So we'll put our stuff on the back burner and decompress later to stay forward with our mission. Yeah, and in this case, our mission was taking care of the fine people of North Carolina and the people of Florida and everywhere but along the way, between Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee. Like it affected such a wide area. Everyone's comparing it to Katrina. This is bigger, right? And if you look at the side-by-side comparisons, it's just, a lot of area, millions and millions of people affected and finite resources. So
and they're still affected. You got released down there. I mean, is it just because of your time was up, or they finally had other resources to come in and give you relief, or how does that work too? Like when do they decide you guys are good?
So for Hurricane Milton, right? It got to a point where, hey, we were excessed. So just like in a fire incident, right? You don't keep all your first alarm units on scene to the last embers out. You start kind of demobilizing and scaling things back to take the next run. In these two hurricanes, we depleted the entire USAR system. And the last time I saw that was Hurricane Harvey, just because the amount of devastation and work that needed to be done. Okay. So the incident in Florida had kind of scaled back. It wasn't near as bad as we thought. Like the tornadoes that happened in Fort Pierce, our guys went out and were on the ground for that. And we're able to do some great work. I know the other task forces that were working on the kind of the Gulf Coast, they did their work, and it was kind of like mission accomplished. So Florida has a robust amount of state teams, a lot of state assets that could handle a lot of what they were doing. So we were accessed and able to return. Now we still have a canine handler in North Carolina, even right now. So while the task force is back and getting everything back together, we still have a canine handler in North Carolina right now doing work, trying to track down and make sure that everyone's accounted for.
Yeah. So a lot of brothers and sisters down there from the fire service and from all just branches of government. And I think, I'm glad you addressed that a little bit too, because some of the stuff was pretty negative that people were saying. And I think in any situation like that, humanity is going to really prevail. And right, there's a lot more positive that can come from these if you focus on it, right? And really keep that good mindset on it. So, thank you for you and your team for doing that. and for taking that sacrifice. And you said something too about, like it's very similar to the fire scene, right? Like, and attitude plays into the fire scene, and outlook, and also experience. And you wrote an article that I really like, and it's titled like, "Are you in charge or in command?" And can you liken what you just went through down there to like some of the things that we see on the fire scene about like command and taking charge, and enlighten us a little bit about what that article was about?
So for me, going back a little bit to that, you have a lot of like leadership stuff that comes up in the fire service. And I'm a big student of leadership. Some of my best mentors in the fire service have been students of leadership, and have really put me on a really, really great path as of late. I've never always been on the great path, right? Yeah, I'm kind of a stubborn person in the sense of, I try and find my own way, and then realize that all these guys have told me to do this way. So once I figured that out and got on this leadership kick,
I'm laughing with you, not at you, bro. I'm right there. I'm the same. Janelle's shaking her head like, yeah, I've told them so many times this stuff.
Yeah, it's so simple if we just listen, right? But why do that? So I started looking around and kind of like my own experiences, and just kind of seeing the fire service face value, where if you got to tell someone you're in charge, then you're probably not in charge, right? And you can have weak leadership and you can have strong leadership. So are you in charge or are you in command? Because when you have command presence, you take full ownership of everything that's going on. And that's in your personal life, that's on the fire ground, that's in the station, that's everything. And it's a mentality. And when you have that, you build resiliency. So I know some of the things that have influenced me was like the Extreme Ownership book by Jocko Willink, and a second book, The Dichotomy of Leadership, that he wrote. I'm a big Extreme Ownership fan because it helped to center me and center what I can and can't control, right? When you're in command, you inherit this giant problem, but you have to delegate it out. You have to be able to bracket it down to manageable bites. When you're in charge, people are going to do things for you because of your position of authority. When you're in command, people will do it because they want to, or because they want to accomplish the mission. So you have to be able to explain and break down what we're doing, right? And people aren't just going to blindly follow that, or if they do, they're going to do it begrudgingly. Versus when you're in command, you have command presence, you're in command of your life, you're taking care of your people. And number one, that's what we need to be doing, right? If I take care of my people, then I know my people are going to run through a brick wall for me. I'm not asking them to run through a brick wall every day, but when that comes time to execute and do something that's a little bit weird, a little bit sketchy, outside the comfort zone, we're going to do that because they're going to know that I have their back. We've trained to that. We've trained up. We've trained to a standard. We know we can accomplish it, and I'm going to be right there with you. That's something I did as a company officer. We basically broke down like how we're going to run as a crew. And that was against a lot of what we didn't really have a way of doing that department wide. So we made one as a company. And from that, we were able to become a tight knit family unit, and we were able to accomplish a lot of just good work. And I can say that because of that, it does work.
Yeah. Build good relationships along the way too.
Yeah. Right? Lifelong, we talk about the brotherhood and the sisterhood and we're family. Are you? Right? Like, we say that we got the t-shirts and we'll use those language, but sometimes our actions speak otherwise, right? And I can tell you from my company, before I came off the truck to the position I'm in now, which was fairly recently, we've built lifelong relationships because of the obstacles we faced on the job, but also because we were there for each other. Our kids play together, our wives hang out together. Like we can call each other anytime. Like that's the brotherhood of the fire service. And you see it on full display in tragedy, but it's nice to see it on full display in triumph as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I just have to jump in and say it's perfect timing that you're on the show this week, because just a few days ago, we launched the Fire Command Ready digital edition, which includes your article that we're talking about right now, the Are You in Charge or Command? So check that out at firerescue1.com/fire command ready. So you can read the Chief's article and several others getting into the command elements of this. And I just quickly also wanted to ask, like with regard to the USAR teams, do you see that play out there as well? Like, are those leaders in command as opposed to just being in charge? You see that kind of play out in that scenario as well?
I do. So the beautiful thing about our task force, I can't speak for all 28, but the ones I've operated with, I liken it to take the very best people in your fire department, and so let's say that's the top 10% of your fire department. Take those top 10% guys and find 80 more of them, and put them on a team, send them downrange with the strongest and best leaders that you can imagine, and then watch what happens. That's how our team works. And as a member of Ohio, there's been multiple times where I've been convoying down and I look around at the people on the team that's next to me. I'm like, how did I get picked? Like, I feel like the dumb kid on the bench, right? Like, how did I get here? Because our guys are some of the best. They teach worldwide. They teach, nationally across the country. They're speakers and writers and chief officers and company officers. Every single one of our guys is at the absolute best level of an example of being in command. And that's why I'm just so fortunate to be part of that group.
The Fire Store, equipping protectors with passion. Every decision we make as a company is about you, our customer. We wouldn't be where we are today without you, and we don't take that lightly. We understand that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit us at thefirestore.com for everything but the truck, and shop our family of brands, including Streamlight, MSA, Lion, FLIR, and more. Now let's get back to the show.
That brings up another good point, just going back to our discussion about the USAR teams. How does one get involved in that? And would you recommend that for people? What's the pitch there?
So the pitch is, for me, we're seeing, at least at the local level, because of hiring and staffing shortages and everything, just which is weird in the fire service right now, at least here in Ohio, for me, we're seeing a lot less applicants for whatever reason. Because of this generational void, a lot of our guys that have been involved in tech rescue and been involved in our special operations stuff, well, they're reaching retirement age, or they've promoted, or life has changed, so they might be moving on or whatever, and so that's leaving a void. The one thing I say is, if your community, region, or whatever has a technical rescue team, and if technical rescue is a passion of yours, like if you like doing rope stuff, if you like doing confined space rescue, trench rescue, collapse, get involved with your local rescue team, right? Because they're, number one, going to go on a lot more runs than a federal USAR asset. But two, you just get to be more involved in things and learn how those work. With ours, with Butler County Tech Rescue, so I do the training stuff for them. That's our shameless plug of getting people to join ours. We try and get people to be involved. And then from there, we grow them and say, all right, well, if you like doing this, right, making these kinds of responses, would you want to do this for 2 to 3 weeks in very austere conditions? If so, why don't we look at a federal task force? Some of the task forces are kind of managed by like a municipality. Like we were with New York down in Florida. That's FDNY and NYPD. I don't know how their application process works or what they do, but I just know that I was talking to some guys from FDNY while I was down there, and they do the same job we do. I was with Cal 3 the first time in Florida, and that's Los Angeles. For us, we're made up of people from Ohio, a little bit into Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and so just kind of our kind of region, which gives us a lot of strength, like strength in numbers with that. But what we do is we do a hiring process kind of once a year, and people can apply. It gets posted through our fire chief's website and kind of goes statewide, and then people can apply. And it's just like going through any other job application process. We look for people with experience, right? Because that's why we say, hey, if you've never done technical rescue before, you probably don't want to jump in and bite off a bite of this apple, right? You might want to do, some local stuff. How do you assimilate? How do you understand how that works? And then a lot of recruits I get, because I do a lot of recruit teaching, every recruit wants to do USAR, which is great. But I'm like, hey, give it 5 years, right? You need 5 years to learn how the fire service works. You need to learn how an engine company works. You need to learn how how chain of command works. And then we'll talk about throwing you over the side of a building with a rope attached to you. So
yeah, stick to the fundamentals first before you start going to the bigger skills and the bigger, I guess playing fields in this case, or disasters, unfortunately, is where you guys are tasked to. But that kind of goes into, training complacency a little bit. You had a great article about that. And right, like sometimes do we have a tendency, and do you see this too? Like we try to just look at all the sweet and sexy things in fire training, and the fundamentals kind of get a little bit displaced or misplaced at times. Tell me a little bit about where that article kind of stemmed from.
Yeah, so I forget what year it was now, but I got to travel out to FDTN, and I did the company officer course there, and I think it was probably 2018 or 2019, because it was right after I made lieutenant. But I took this company officer course out there in Indiana, and if you ever have a chance to travel to FDTN, please go. It's terrific.
Fire Department Training Network.
Yep, Fire Department Training Network. The basics always work. And so some of the stuff I learned out there was that, hey, I'm not near as good as I thought it was, right? We're doing just size up modeling on actual fires, right? So they're lighting real fires. And the scenarios they put you through are pretty basic stuff. It wasn't crazy, but it was just basic with a twist. And I realized, and I made some mistakes. I did some good things, some bad things. But I brought those back because I'd rather make those mistakes in training, because I'll never make those mistakes on the fire ground. At least try not to, right? So in that same mentality, what I was seeing is that, we could be really good as a fire department at doing technical rope rescue. Like we had a whole policy and we were really good about that. But then we'd go to a fire and putting a line in service seemed to take a while. It's like, well, I think our focus here is shift. And sometimes people talk about advanced firefighting. I don't know what that is, but because I think it's just firefighting. There's a lot that goes into firefighting between engine and truck work. But what I saw was we just lose our fundamentals. And then part of that too is that in my fire department now, 1 in 5 guys on the rig is brand new. And by brand new, I mean 2 years or less on the job total.
Yeah.
So that generational knowledge where we could get away with knowing little shortcuts and things, well, we don't have that because they don't know how to do those. So what we've done is kind of going back to the basics with our training, and we're doing a pre-connect pulls again. One of my favorite drills on the engine was we'd be going to Kroger, which is our grocery store. And on the way there, we just leave a little earlier and we drive through a subdivision. And if I saw an open garage door, we'd stop. I'd go knock on the door. I'd lie to the lady, right? Not that I advocate lying to the public, but I'd just lie and say, hey, I got a new guy on the rig, whether I did or not. And say, can we use your front yard for training for the next 10 minutes? And they're like, yeah. And never was told no. Oftentimes they wanted to film it because I thought that was cool. They'd set a little lawn chair, go right ahead. And I'd go back to the truck. I'm like, all right, pull a line to the door, mask up for time. Time starts when you touch the hose. Time stops when you're on air. And we just got good at that. And we do that 50 times, over the course of, matter of months. And then when we got a 1 alarm, wouldn't you know that I didn't have to worry about, man, I hope that line gets in service. That never crossed my mind.
Right.
Right. On one occasion, we got toned out at 4 a.m. for a working fire. It's 3 minutes down the road. The update was kids trapped. Person says he's going to shoot responders. Just all sorts of information coming in that's just heightening the stakes. So I got a lot coming in, and I'm first due, and I got a lot to worry about. But one thing wasn't the hose pull, and one thing wasn't the water supply, and one thing wasn't positioning. Those three things happened. We made an interior push, and it was fine. So, because of training on the basics.
Yeah.
Right. That's all that matters. Unfortunately, like none of that was true. Like there was no kids trapped. Like we put the fire out and everything was good. But the stakes were very, very high for performance in that. Well, stakes are high every time we go out, so we better train to it and be good at it.
Yeah. Well, tell that to your blood pressure and your heart rate, right? Like fire
100%.
was normal, but your body is heightened, your crew is heightened, so they're able to perform then, in that heightened situation. But there's so many positive things to that small, like 15-minute drill. There's also there's PR in that, right? If you take a couple seconds just to explain to somebody, they take photos, they got kids, right? You can also market the department, which we do a horrible job of I think throughout the country, because we're the fire department, but people don't understand what that is, right? They just think it's Chicago Fire or whatever fire show is on. They don't understand how heavy that hose is and how often we need to do that so we become proficient in it. And you've mentioned too and stuff like that, like you time your crew. What do you say to somebody who's like, well, I don't like to time my crew. I don't like to do that or put numbers to it or whatever. What's the rebuttal to that?
I'd say they're wrong. So as when I was a company officer, I wanted to know tasks. And really that's came out of another conference that I went to. Like none of these ideas are mine, right?
They are right now, brother. They are right now. Go with it.
It might be mine right now, but I've been influenced by a lot of great people over the years and great instructors to help mentor me and guide me on that path. And one of them was like task analysis, right? And how long should a hose line pull? So again, I teach at our trade school. And one of the, right, wrong, or indifferent, academy training is different than street training, right? There's a difference between how we operate in the real world and how we operate in a fire school. So an example is a ground ladder throw. So for the state of Ohio standard to deploy a ground ladder for rescue in the academy, you have 10 minutes to complete that skill, which it's, that is what it is. I don't control it, but it's 10 minutes. So if we apply that to the street, my question is, are you good with your crew taking 10 minutes to get a ladder up to VES? And everyone will say, absolutely not. Okay, well then let's make a new standard. So we said 90 seconds, right? We kind of did a task analysis. Great guys, mediocre guys, how long does it take you? And we kind of figured out 90 seconds to go from rig to window and make an entry. Like that's our minimum benchmark. Same thing with
in your community, right? Like
in
based off your setbacks, construction, right? Like you got to take that into account, but
and that's why you can't have it. That's why we have a state standard, not a community standard, right? What works for my department is not going to work in someone else's, and vice versa, right? Like what Philadelphia does is terrific, but it's just not going to work for me. Mm-hmm. So you have to evaluate that as well. So I would time my crew because I wanted to know, hey, like if I'm doing a 360, how long does it take you to get that line flaked? And so we said 60 seconds. And we actually drilled to the point where 60 seconds is our minimum benchmark. We got to a point where we could get a line in service in 18 because through drilling and repetition, we figured out that the way we'd always done it wasn't necessarily the best way. So we actually we didn't even change our hose loads. We just reinvented a different way to stretch. We call it a split stretch because we use flat loads. And we could get a line in service in 18 seconds and get positive water on fire within 25.
One person goes nozzle, one person goes a couple couplings back kind of deal, like
yes, it's where we put our loops. But yeah, so the nozzle one took like the top 50 feet to the door, and then our driver would stretch he'd pull a loop, and that basically would clear the bed. So he would stretch 45 off of them, and what that did was the driver wasn't just standing at the pump panel waiting. Like the driver would get to a point, drop it, on his way back, evaluate the line, throw out a couple kinks if he could, send water. So we're not even calling for water because, hey, he's looking at the nozzleman at the door, line stretched. Why do we have to shout water at that point? What else are you waiting on? Confetti?
Yeah.
Right. So,
the okay. Yeah. Give me the okay to go do my job. Right.
And based on our standards that we had set as a company, I'm like, hey man, if you take a shot at the fire, dude, You don't need me to tell you. Like, I got enough things to worry about, man. But opening a line ain't one of them. So take a shot.
Right.
And
Well, you guys, you have that kind of parlays into like some of the unique stuff you do at Westchester, with pre assignments or pre-arrival assignments, right?
yeah, absolutely. So, we preach that we're an aggressive fire department, and I can say for a fact that working there, we are, right. So we still believe in aggressive fire attack. We still believe in interior pushes. It's a really, really great place to work and operate in. I obviously love it. So we have pre-scripted arrival assignments based upon our fireground procedures. So we're a very different, diverse community. We have really tall buildings. We have really big buildings, like 1,000,000 square foot warehouses. We have condos, apartments, 4 and 5 story apartments, low income apartments, hotels, a hospital, a movie theater, all of it.
Those taxpayers that you're getting commercial, and then four
Yep.
stories of residential above, right? Wood frame construction usually.
And then we have really old stuff too that's built from the 1850s. So we got all this generational stuff. So we kind of broke it down to 4 response modes based on what we're responding to. So 4 occupancy types: residential, multifamily, commercial, or high rise, mid-rise.
Okay.
So based upon what we're going to, and because we know our area, if we're going to a house fire, we have a pre-scripted arrival assignment for that. And our first
single family, you got first due is doing what?
First due is fire attack. And so we have 5. Our department has 5 fire stations, 3 engine companies, 2 aerials, medic units, medic transport units, and a shift supervisor. So the first due might be an aerial, which is either our 100-foot ladder or a 100-foot tower. Both have pumps. Yeah, both have pumps. But if they pull first due, they're taking fire attack, and that's fine. Like that's how we operate, because we don't run combo houses. Second arriving takes search, and so we are all about aggressive search. We're all about proactive search, and that's either ahead of the line, in conjunction with fire attack. It might be VES. It might be above the fire. It's really up to that company officer where we're going to start our search, and we train a lot to the UL and NIST stuff that's coming out about where victims are found,
survivable spaces. Yeah,
absolutely. And so we'll go and isolate spaces. 9 times out of 10, we can hit the front door pretty easily because it's right there. But we're not relying on a truck company to force a door for us. We'll do that, right? Our third due will take a backup line, and so they'll either follow the first line or they will go above the fire or adjacent to and protect exposures. Our fourth due is RIT, so we still run a proactive RIT company who will still 360 the building, throw ladders, secure utilities, remove obstacles. We still believe in a proactive RIT company.
Throw some ladders, second story if need to, secondary means of egress, right? Like set that stuff up.
Yep. And the other thing we do, which is very unique, is we have this IRIC concept. So our medic units, our medic transport units, are firefighters as well. And so our first due medic unit will pack out, and they'll actually become our 2 out. So we can accomplish aggressive firefighting while still doing 2 in, 2 out. So they go, when we train on it, they gather all their gear and they go to where the first line went. So if it went through the front door, they bring a RIT bag up, they stand by with that and attic ladder. And then our fourth due, which is our RIT company, marries with them. So we provide a 5-person RIT company.
Okay. You got 3 on a truck or 3 on an engine.
Yeah, minimum of 3.
Okay.
Yep. And then our fifth due, when they show up, is they start kind of backfilling where things need to happen.
Yeah.
So,
and water supply, water supply too. Just to be like, we didn't mention it here, but I know you and I talked behind the scenes. Like that first due truck or that first due apparatus, they're really looking for that water supply as well. That driver, as you said, they place a lot of emphasis on trying to get that hydrant for themselves, right?
Yep. So, we're 95% hydrogen, so we're pretty fortunate in that. So we'll secure our own water coming in. If that can't happen, right, then we call it a deviation. We just call that out. Like, hey, engine 71, we're going in dry. Okay. Right. And now we know that the next subsequent actions just need to capture that. We take 2 water supplies anyway, so we just got to fill it. Same thing if that first dude pulls up and they got a victim hanging from a window. Well, then they probably not going to stretch a line like common sense says, grab a ladder and pluck them. So they're going to do that, but they'll radio that out. Hey, we're going for rescue. Got it. Go for rescue. So now that just changes the order of arrival slightly. We're all very good thinking firefighters. So, the whole fear of like, well, what if we forget to pull a line? I don't know how you could do that, man. It's, a working fire. So there'll be plenty of lines pulled.
Yeah. Usually there's a lot of lines pulled.
A lot of lines.
Right?
There will be one, I promise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, hey, I kind of like that idea, how do you go from where, you were before to this? I mean, there's obviously, you got to be disciplined. You have to all be on the same page. Take me through that process. If somebody's listening to this and saying, hey, we're close to this already, what things did you guys, as an organization, make sure you had, done, T's crossed, I's dotted to get to this kind of spot in place?
Yeah. So one is looking at like, all right, well, what can you offer, right? And so part of that, and maybe even going back to the zero impact period, like we know that we can get water on fire fast because of where our fire stations are placed, the size of our community. I mean, and we're fairly large for a suburban department. We've got like almost 70,000 residents, and we cover almost 40 square miles. I mean, there's a lot bigger departments out there, obviously, but we do a pretty good job with what we have. So one is your staffing, right? Our staffing allows us to be able to do this. Our station placement allows us to be able to do this. Our mutual aid partners, when they come in, we trained with them and we explained, hey, this is kind of what we're doing. And it's nothing outside the norm for, hey, if our mutual aid pulls first or second due because it's on like one of our borders, cool. Then they're going to work within our framework, right? I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's our sandbox right now. You're playing in our sandbox. Just like when we go to theirs, their fire's mutual aid, well, we're going to play in their sandbox. So it'd be nice. We're doing a lot of regionalization with like blue card command and things. And we started doing that as a communication model, but we're still going to promote our policies and tactics. So I guess number one, going back to it, would be what can you realistically provide? In Southwestern Ohio and just Ohio in general, there's a lot of rural areas. Even in our county, if you go to our far western edges, it's a lot of volunteer departments where they don't have staffing. Well, okay, then interior attack is probably not going to be the thing that you're going to get to based on how fast this fire develops and how fast you can get on scene. So what can you do? Well, maybe it's VES. Maybe it's good water supply operations. What can you actually legitimately offer as a fire department to your community? And I think sometimes we oversell what we are actually able to accomplish. That's a hard truth in my opinion, but I think it's real.
Yeah. Now that transfers a better safety for everybody involved, to be right. Like being honest with your crew and with yourselves, with your organization. And number one, how can you get better if you don't admit where you need to get better? And like making promises to your community is that you can't keep is only going to hurt everybody in the long run, right? Like,
right. Like, we invite a lot of mutual aid to our fires, even though we have a lot of units responding, just because, we make 9,000 calls a year. Our first due might be tied up. So that's why we invite a lot of mutual aid and backfill. If you want to do it, just be honest with what you have and then start looking at, all right, well, what can we offer? Our response plan changes a little bit based on our occupancy type. For instance, like if we're going to a commercial building, we'll start marrying companies together. We're not going to expect one company to drag a 2.5. We'll put two companies on that. Well, that requires a lot more agencies responding. So a really good practice would be have a good aggressive command plan for that, because there's going to be a lot of things showing up, and that's where Blue Card has a lot of good things to offer with that. But at the same time, like just know what you can and can't perform.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We did a task analysis. We're like, all right, what are all the things that we need to cover based on NFPA? Here it is. All right, well, here's how we can make that happen.
Yeah.
It works.
Evaluated, created a plan, and executed it. Huh.
Yeah.
Funny how that works sometimes, right?
crazy. And then we have these like after action reviews, and like we highlight what worked and what didn't work, and then we revise the plan. And so it's a continual growth of it, but you know, it works.
And what do you think the biggest reason why departments are having struggles with this simple process that we just talked about?
Oh, geez. I think the root of all problems in the fire service is ego. So
Yeah. Amen, man.
yeah,
Right.
I
Like,
think again we overpromise and undersell what we really can do. I think um, I think we're just a little hesitant to get on the same page of like what's best for the community. Just like we talked about being mission mindseted. Right? Our mission is to save lives and property. Right? Like that's what we're here for. Um, we have a mission statement in my fire department. And it was really wordy. I actually pulled it one day for a presentation I did, and I still can't remember it. So we created our own for our company, which was our mission is to save lives, reduce bodily injury from fire and other perils. Period. And that put everybody on the same page as what we're here to do, because everyone could recite that. We knew what it was, and we held everybody to that standard. When we don't have mission alignment and we don't have a clear vision of the path, how can you expect anyone to get along with it? So I think it goes back to being in command, right? Taking ownership of what you got and communicating that message forward. And if you can communicate the message forward to the troops, sit back and let them work for you. And
right.
they're going to do some amazing things. But it's typically because there's discomfort, discourse, and confusion. And often because we're too egotistical to actually break it down into simple tasks.
Yep. And it
Just
all
my-
a great segue back into one of the first points that you made that was so prominent, that make sure that people can be in charge, but you really need to take command, be in command, and that encompasses so many of the different aspects that we just addressed here. So I mean, perfect segue, brother. I mean, it almost seems like we rehearsed it, but Janelle knows that never happens because I don't really go by a script. It's just good conversations and great insight from you. And for our listeners, I highly encourage you to just hop on over. We'll leave some links in the show notes about the different articles that Chief has written. And Chief, thank you. Perfect insight. Thanks for sharing your story about being down in North Carolina and Florida. And I think that really opened some people's eyes and clarified some things. So perfect timing on that. Appreciate the honesty there, but we're not going to let you go yet. We still have to throw you on the hot seat. We got some more difficult questions, a little more personal.
Send it.
And we love doing this, throwing them at our guests, because those that are very well versed sometimes have trouble with this. Like, oh, geez, I don't even know where to begin on this one. So Janelle's going to lead it with the first one.
All right, Chief, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the fire service today?
Biggest challenge facing the fire service today. Whew. Obviously, we're experiencing a big recruitment retention issue. And for the life of me, I don't know why people don't want to be firefighters anymore. I can't explain it. I'm seeing our low recruitment numbers. While as big of a crisis as that is, I think the biggest one is letting go the institutional knowledge that we have and the clear lack of a succession plan, right? So we're looking at a lot of guys retiring over the next few years. We've already lost some guys to retirement. All their knowledge goes with them, right? So what are we doing to retain that and recoup that and to train up our younger people to know that? So while pulling lines might seem boring to people, like I just did that last week. Cool. Well, start walking into your buildings, right? Start getting in there and showing people like all those things you knew about that building that you're not going to know when they're gone. And then with that is what are we doing to retain people? So are we being, again, honest with the fire service as to what it is, right? Like, I still believe it's the greatest job in the world. But I see people that are bashing it. I see people that, maybe the brotherhood isn't in full display as I alluded to before. I think at the end of the day, like we need to just be honest with what this is and do the best we can to recruit, retain people, and start treating people the way they should be treated.
Yeah. Well said. As far as challenges though, I think you addressed quite a few of them for the fire service. Very well said. But what about you personally? What's something that you've overcome? What's a personal challenge you've overcome?
Oh God, that's every day. So I think there's a difference between arrogance and cockiness, right? So when I came to the fire service, I always wanted to be a cop, and I tell this story to new recruits all the time.
Are you really, you want to say that on a fire man, I'm impressed. I like it. That's honesty, man. I appreciate that. That's great.
But
yeah, so I'm sorry I interrupted you on that.
No, it was the fire service that rescued me because I joined a fire department floor post, and the first night, I'm flowing a hose line. I thought that was kind of neat. Like, it's pretty cool, right? But these guys are just kind of being firemen, just screwing around, like just hanging out. And then they got a car fire, and within 60 seconds, that hose is disconnected. They're gone, and I'm just back at this firehouse, like what just happened, right? In the blink of an eye, they're gone. They come back like 45 minutes later. They go back to screwing around. I'm like, so you do this all day? And they're like, yeah, man. I'm like, sign me up. Like, this is the best job in the world. You just do this all over and over. Like, yeah. So, because of being young in the fire service, like, I thought I had all the answers, and it took a long time to realize that I don't. And it took a long time and just getting on the right path of realizing that, hey, there's a lot of smart people out there, and I should probably start listening to them. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm probably in the wrong room. So, being able to, to some extent, slow down, listen to other perspectives, evaluate the relevancy and the motives behind those discussions, and just being able to have good, clear communication, right? My heart's always for my people. My heart's always for the fire service and for the mission at hand and for my community. But I think a lot of people forget that. I think a lot of people forget what you're here for. To the point where I started requiring, when I'm teaching classes, I'll have people do a little writing assignment, like, why do you want to be a firefighter? Like, why do you want to be in EMS? And the whole purpose of it was, hey, in 10 years, when you're acting a certain way, I'm going to pull that paper back out, give it to you. Remember who this used to be? Where'd that guy go? So
yeah, that's good, because that's why we do this podcast. That's why, like, for me, I have almost 100 episodes of me trying to, say, hey, I believe in the same thing, right? Same thing with you. Your guys, they may disagree with you. Hopefully they pull this out and go, where's this guy? Right? Like, it's okay to question each other that way, right? And I think that's part of what you said earlier. If you lose your ego, you don't mind having those conversations with people, right?
Yeah. It's not a power struggle, man. It's not a power struggle.
Nope.
Well, Chief, you obviously have a really positive attitude. I really appreciate that. How or who has been the biggest positive influence on your fire service career?
Ooh. I probably can't. There's no way I could pick one. Internally within my department, one of my he was my former battalion chief, and I hated him, and he hated me. We just could not see eye to eye. And his name's Bill. He's great. He lives in Florida. His house was not impacted, thankfully, because I was just down there. But Bill and I just could not get along. And when I got promoted finally, I was working directly for him at that point, and I finally took off, right? Again, I talked about being stubborn, but I was able to see, like, the reason he was so disciplined and regimented was because it gave him a lot of freedom to control his day. Like, I knew when that man, like, at 7 a.m. we'd do shift briefing, he'd have breakfast at 7:10 every day. Like, he was so regimented. Like, he worked out at 2. And I'm like, why don't you just let it go? And the reason was because if you don't control your day, the day will control you. And so then I watched a lot of peers internally and externally, like, they can't get anything accomplished because they don't set a plan. And that man had a plan every day. He was also extremely practical. And even though he was very old school. And then once I finally figured all that out, I'm like, oh, maybe I should do what he's doing. And what you know, like, it works really, really well. So he was a huge influencer of mine. A couple of my lieutenants, Nelson being one of them, he got me on the path of like leadership and turned me on to a lot of the leadership presentations that I've been a part of. Lieutenant Nelson Klaber, he's one for sure. And then outside of the fire service, I mean, or outside of my walls, like some of my subordinate guys, Jason Jeffers, Logan DeBoard, Brian Bradford, like William Shelton, like all these guys, my whole crew, Mark Hanmer, like these dudes push me to be better every day. So when I took over as a company officer before I got this position, I was there for them. I was there for our citizens first, but I was there for them, and they were there for me. And so that helped me just to keep spearheading the things that would ultimately make me better and hopefully make our department better. And plenty, and like 10,000 more that I can't even possibly name. Like
That's good.
Right.
Yeah, very well done. You know, you said your crew and a lot of the people that mentor you push you to be better. I want to bring it all back together here to the real, essence of what we try to do here is trying to improve and then ask the question. So, what are you working on, or how are you working to be better?
So for me, being in a different position now, so as the chief of training, like, I'm off the rig. But one thing that I try to do to stay relevant and to be better is to not lose my connection with the guys. One thing I do is I still get to the firehouses. I still run a 24-hour shift a week, which is pretty nice. It's just kind of how we do our schedule. And so I'll do that 24-hour shift at a different firehouse every week. Because there's a big difference between having lunch with the guys and then having dinner and TV time and ice cream time with the guys, and making runs with the guys. So I try to let them know that I'm there for them. I'm not there to check up on them and let's make sure that the cobwebs are dust. Like, no, man, like, you run your house. I'm here to be a support element. I try and still keep to those same plans and principles that were taught to me. So every day, first thing I do is get in the gym, because if I don't control my day, then my day will control me. So I still stay fit, because I can't possibly promote a fitness standard or a performance standard if I can't do it. When we're teaching drills, I'll show you how to do it, right? And I might not even do it well, which, again, everything's a perishable skill. So keeping up on it, and then, the best thing that we bring to the fire ground is our minds. So staying into the studies, evaluating the studies, evaluating the books, all the stuff that's coming out, the podcasts. There's just so much good information that's out there in the 21st century. And if you're not staying up on it, man, like you're missing out. You're at a strategic disadvantage if you're not listening and reading and keeping up on stuff.
Yeah, perfect. That's the essence of really what our guests are about. And like I said, you're a misfit, man. Because I say that term, but I truly believe that in the in the context of the fire service, there's more misfits than we know of. It's just sometimes we're not as loud as the non-misfits. So great to have you on the program. I'm going to have to start making T-shirts and coins and stuff and sending them out. So hopefully the next time I see you, I'll have something like that for you. But just great insights. Again, thanks for being here. Thanks for all your contributions to FR1. Thanks to your contributions today. So many different nuggets that we can take from this. For those that are listening to us, I highly encourage you. You gotta just check out Chief on video. He's cool, calm, and collective, number one, but he's also very passionate, and I think that comes across a lot better in video. And as he's speaking, you could tell he's speaking from the heart. He's speaking from what he truly believes, and that's again what we really love to hear and talk about here on the Better Every Shift podcast. If you have questions for Chief, you have questions for Janelle or I, you can email us at bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. Again, watch us on video, rate, review the show. Let us know if we're on to something or on something. You can watch us on our YouTube channel. You could go to firerescue1.com. We have a Better Every Shift banner there with all of our guests, including just the great insight from Chief Trevor Frodge. I can't thank you enough, Chief. Again, all the different points, man. We talked about a little bit before. And it's just the essence of what we're really trying to do here. And I want to try to reiterate some of those great points that you highlighted throughout the last hour. And I think one of it is remember what you're here for, lose your ego, listen to those around you, always try to make and take time to connect with your crew, connect with members that you're going to be intricately working with. Take command of your health, take command of your relationships with your crew, with family, with everybody, and really take command of your career. Because in essence, it's about learning something, doing something, and sharing something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening, everybody.